Like most people, I spend a significant amount of time staring at my phone. Research shows that people spend more time looking at their devices than they do making eye contact with other human beings. Our daily interactions have gone digital. Every day as I scroll through my social media timelines, I experience the thoughts and actions of the people I've chosen to follow.
Welcome to the United Tastes of America, where I'm going to make each state's most popular dish, infusing it with Hennessy. Rack of ribs, adobo.
They bear the fruit that I've picked to eat. These are the feeds that feed me.
Get on.
I'm gone, dog. Nah. I told you. Look, I told you.
You have it. I didn't know you were tickling.
I didn't know you were tickling. What you
Fellas, have you ever tried to take a shower with your lady to set the mood right and you can't because she got it on hell?
Don't nobody want to get in the shower to swim. We want to get in the swimming pool, we go swimming.
That's not what it is.
Y'all don't be clean. I don't see how y'all take showers in the freezing cold.
And I see why you be scratching all the time, because your skin dry as everything,
well, you
because
know
you burn off all the
well, you
moisture.
know what? I'm practicing for hell.
Respect people. So I just finished yoga, so this is about as peaceful as I'm going to get on the subject. So for all the brothers out there who have European partners, good for you. We don't need to hear you disrespecting African women. We don't need to hear you telling African women that they aren't worthy, that they need to better themselves in order to be with you. You might have been hurt by somebody. Don't blame that on all African women in existence. Every time you have a negative thought about African women, write it down on a piece of paper and then go and take that to your black mother and give it to her. We aren't concerned with any of your negativity towards our women because we love them.
In our culture, the black woman represents resilience, versatility, innovation, complexity, creativity, femininity. She can be a pillow or a rock, the sun or shade. And if you're slipping, she'll let you know.
It's like some of y'all don't think that children have a conscious brain or something. It's like you think that you do things in front of them and they don't add it up and that they don't memorize it. Check your fucking self. If you are in front of children, check yourself. Check how you behave. Because this concept of do as I say, not as I do, doesn't work. It doesn't work. That's a paradigm that you tell yourself to excuse yourself from having to be accountable for your behavior in front of the most impressionable beings on the planet. And it is sickening and incensing to see the willingness that people will go to lie to themselves to make it okay to be their wackest self in front of their own children.
I have known and been fed by many of them.
You know, I always say that mental health and wellness is the ultimate revolution.
Whether young or seasoned, she is queen. If she is our cornerstone, then he is our foundation. She is the flesh. He is the bone. Black women are the walls of our house. Black men are the floor. Black women are what we lean on. Black men are what we stand on.
I want to talk about how important it is for a male child to have a man in the house. I remember when I was young and I would get afraid, I would instantly stand and talk like my father. And usually it worked out. Think about how powerful that is. We're not talking about the dissemination of information. We're just talking about a stance. We're talking about a tone. I modeled my father. And I think about how it would be if I didn't have that model in the house. Like, fuck him talking to me, fuck lessons that he taught me. I just mean just knowing how a man stands and how a man talks. Woo.
What's up, y'all? So I'm sitting and I'm thinking, how dope would it be if we changed the way we talk to men who are about to become fathers, right? Because rarely ever is it a positive or supportive conversation. I know you better take care of that girl, better take care of that baby, better take care of them responsibilities. I've been in so many family mediations where I have to stand up and say, hey, he needs to take care of himself too. That's kind of important. Now, I'm no behavioral scientist, but I know fear when I see it. And I've been a black man long enough to know that with us, fear don't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like rage. Sometimes it looks like anger. Shit, sometimes it looks like neglect. Now, that's not an excuse to not take care of your children. But come on, y'all. How long are we gonna keep acting like that fear is not a contributing factor to the number of broken families we have in our community? Because turning that blind eye ain't worked for us in ever. Never. It's never worked. Ever. Let's try a different way. Always be the best person that you can be. Then you'll always be the best man that you can be. And you'll always be the best father that you can be. Comment below. Tell me what you think.
What does it feel like to be the floor of a culture?
It's hard to be and assume a role that you don't see or you didn't see, you know? But at the same time, I also know people who didn't grow up with a father or father figure that are great fathers.
How much weight are they carrying?
Being a parent, and I want to say this in the most transparent, nurturing, loving way. I love being a parent. I wouldn't change it for the world. But being a parent is the biggest inconvenience. In saying that, you don't get to parent when it's convenient.
What's it look like when you remove a father's foundation from a family structure?
I don't really have any positive male role models. You know, I have some male role models, but if that's pimping and drug dealing and doing whatever else you got to do to make it, oh yeah, I had a lot of role models.
How important is male mentoring?
I believe we're referring to the Striving Black Brothers Coalition, and one of my mentors created the group Art Barbosa. The group is still going strong, and I have a lot of respect for Art and the things that he does. You know, Dr. Joe Marshall in the Omega Boys Club, and that, you know, like once you really get this mentoring thing kind of it grabs a hold of you and you grab a hold of it, I mean, this can really change a person's whole trajectory. And in that is a father figure role.
How does their upbringing and parental influences impact their own parenting?
Because my parents didn't really talk to us about marriage, or, you know, it was always when her and my dad would be talking, it doesn't concern the children. It's the adults' business. Go. They didn't bring us into conversation if they were having issues or even asked us how we felt.
But then again, I get in a lot of arguments with my mother, and everybody says it's because we're alike, so you got that.
What personality trait do you think that the two of you share the most than you and your mom?
Oh, definitely resilience. I mean, you could put anything on us, it's not going to break us, it doesn't matter. We don't panic under pressure. There's no the end of the world complex, you know what I mean? Like, oh, everything's going wrong, the world's over. No, there's none of that. We're gonna figure it out and make it happen. And she's been making it happen for a long time by herself. So, yeah, we share that. I got that from her.
Do we embrace their guidance and seek their vision as often as we reach for their wallets?
Sometimes our classes reflect what was happening in the 70s, which is just community teachings. Like, we just need to talk about some stuff. Let's talk about it. Because we don't have those spaces.
We don't have those spaces.
We still don't have, I mean, even in 2019, we need safe spaces for Black people to talk about Black issues, and where we're not arguing about who's right. Let there be multiple ideas in a room.
Disagreeing is part of life. It's just respectfully disagreeing. I mean, we can go on about disagreeing in politics and religion and everything. That'd be a whole nother interview, but right. Yeah, disagreeing is natural and normal.
That's what she said? Oh, okay. I never even thought about it like that. Oh, that's what he said? Oh, okay. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I can see why he could say that. Like, we just need those spaces, right? Where people aren't being cut off, you know.
Or having to validate.
Right.
Having to validate your blackness in a black space is as harmful as
Absolutely.
is not having space in white spaces.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. It is very harmful for black people to not be validated and loved by black people. Yeah.
What they're doing in Sacramento at the African marketplace, genius, you know, genius. And not only genius, practical. And not only practical, needed. And not only needed, necessary for that community, right?
And as each of them journeyed out of their own childhood into manhood and then fatherhood, have they felt valued and supported along the way? How old were you when you became a father?
26.
Did you choose the timing or did the timing choose you?
The timing chose me. And I had no intention, wasn't trying, just found myself in a situation. And to be perfectly honest with you, it was a situation I really was not ready for and didn't want to be in. You know, so it wasn't a happy moment. It wasn't like, oh yay. No, it was, oh my God.
I was 31 years old when I became a father.
Did you choose the timing or did the timing choose you?
I chose the timing very, very carefully.
That was my initial and really immature thinking. You know what I mean?
Fear-based.
Fear of the unknown.
Did you choose the timing or did the timing choose you?
We pretty much chose the timing. Yeah.
And for me, two out of the three. The first two were planned. This last one kind of snuck up on us.
Time chose me.
What is your role as a father as you see it?
Ooh. To be a father,
being a provider, you know, being that person that she can look up to, you know, when she needs to identify what a man is, you know, being able to be that example, you know, knowing and understand her self-worth, you know, she knows how she's supposed to be treated because, you know, that's the way my father treats me, you know. For, you know, bottom line, just being that anchor, you know, just that support.
My elder said to me, he's like, you gonna mess up. Like, you're gonna mess up. He was like, just be there.
Did you feel prepared to step into that responsibility when you became a dad? Or is that something that came over time?
I don't know that anybody's prepared. You know what I mean? Because there's no blueprint.
No, I mean, I wasn't prepared. I was excited. I was up to the challenge, but no way was I prepared.
But there's no manual because no kid's the same, no person's the same. So you're going to get somebody different every time. And just when you think you got it down, you get a kid that just is completely different.
No, I don't think anybody prepared me for what I was getting ready to find out. No, I don't think you can be prepared for that. I think it's just, you know, you learn a lot trial and error, and you learn a lot through just experience. So every day I'm learning the do's and the don'ts, and at different stages I'm learning too.
No, I wasn't prepared, but I wasn't prepared as far as time goes. I think I was prepared in the sense that, you know, I was fortunate enough to grow up with my dad and have a lot of good male figures in my life, and I can kind of, you know, reach back from, you know, lessons and situations that I've learned, being able to pick and pull from them. When I became a father, you know, it gave me that backup that I needed.
It's a huge learning process, and as they grow, they continue to teach you more and more about who you should be and how they need you to show up. And so it's like you find it yourself, it's like you're growing with them. And so to date, I've had some amazing teachers, but I always say Malcolm is probably my greatest teacher.
In your co-parenting relationship with your wife, do you feel that your role as a father is being supported?
Absolutely.
How does she show that support?
She shows it by encouraging me. She shows it by verbalizing that support.
You know, she doesn't go against anything that I might want to do with the kids or any suggestions that I may have. So in that sense, she supports me because she doesn't undermine my role, you know, whether in front of the kids or behind closed doors. So.
Sometimes she likes to undermine my authority. Maybe coddle him a little bit too much. Maybe I'm a little too hard on him, you know, you never know. But I've been part of the real world, so I understand that being easy on them is not going to help them in the future, period, because the world's not going to be easy on them, ever.
I feel like we're learning how to co-parent. I think we have some shared ideas and some different ideas.
Me and my daughter's mother are not married. We weren't married at the time. I'm married to a completely different person. She's married to a completely different person. So, you know, we both kind of went our separate ways. We still do the co-parenting thing. And, you know, I really have to just tip my hat to her because she does a good job at what she does. And over time, we've gotten along better. It hasn't always been the smoothest, but, you know, with age and maturity comes just like, man, let's put our personal issues aside and co-parent for the sake of our child.
But even though we're in two different households, it still would have been easier if me and my ex-wife was on the same page about what we expected, you know, from our kids. She's okay with them, you know, sliding through and getting through high school because, you know, she's never seen any different. I've seen what college is like, you know what I mean? I know how important it would be to have an education beyond high school. So I'm like, no, but because they're with her the majority of the time, the expectation is different.
I think my son's very fortunate. He has two loving parents. His mom loves him immensely. I love him immensely. He has a great family on both sides. And so I think in that respect, my son is very fortunate. And, you know, I think his mom is a great person. I think we're just learning how to find that happy median just around different values and different ideas.
She feels I'm too hard on him, so she tries to protect him. You know what I mean? But it's making him into a mama's boy. And that's a recipe for disaster when he gets older, you know what I mean? Because where's mama going to be when you're older? Every single time you do something, I'm going to mama, I'm going to go to mama, I'm going to go to mama. Eventually, mama ain't going to be there no more.
And I think that's what young men need. They just, you know, because you run into all of these situations and, you know, it's, you know, with women raising you, you know, they haven't ran into these situations because they was women, you know? And then so, you know, you just got a lot of young men run into these situations with their head chopped off so they don't know what to do, you know? And so they're making a lot of bad choices.
Can women teach men how to be men?
No. And then if a woman, if it's only the woman there, then the streets is gonna teach them the rest. Period. Point blank. And you know, it ain't no each one teach one. It's the game is to be sold, not told out there. So, ain't nobody telling nobody nothing.
There's things that's going on inside his body and inside his mind that she'll never be able to relate to. So, if she moves out the way, things could be okay. If she keeps coddling him, they both may have to learn the hard way.
What hinders co-parenting beyond two people from two different backgrounds is the previous relationship, whatever that relationship was. I think what makes co-parenting easier is healing. What makes co-parenting easier is people having resolve around the past.
Now, you know, since there's been time and a little more personal growth on both ends, that there is a better understanding. There were times where
personal feelings left some gaps that was hard to work through. And we're in a much better place when it comes to dealing with each other. I'm not gonna delve in the past because it's the past, but you know, I'm looking forward to building more where we are now.
The relationship that you have with your dad, would you describe that as close, complicated, or non-existent?
I'm very close with my dad. I grew up with a lot of really strong men in my family, uncles, friends of my dad, and so I was raised in a tribe of mentors.
My biological dad was not in the picture, and then so basically my stepdad, he stepped in the picture. He was in the picture my whole life, but he wasn't necessarily present. He was present, but in a different kind of way. He was more like financially present.
Oh, we cool. That's my dude. Like, we talk all the time.
What does closeness look like for you two?
Understanding. Like, it took me a lot of years to really understand why he did some of the things that he did when I was younger. And then I found myself being put in them same situations as a father, and it's just like, yeah, I get it.
I mean, he's a real good dude. One thing I would say about him, he was always real positive in my life. He always was telling me, you know, how sharp I was, how bright I was, how successful I could be, and you know how much potential I always had. So that definitely stuck with me.
I say it is what it is, right? Because early he was, like I said, he was an awesome father. He was there. He coached my football team, coached my baseball team, up until about 8 or 9. And then when him and my mother split, and that's when it went in a completely different direction. So spent more time looking for him than I did with him.
You know, growing up, my dad was in the same line of work that I'm in. So my adolescent and my teen years, my dad was working swing shifts, so he was never there. You know, he missed the little leagues, he missed the football games, he missed the football practices, the baseball practices. He missed a lot of those things because he was working and going to school, you know, to get his bachelor's. So it was, a lot of the responsibility fell on my mother.
And then as we got older and, you know, the grandkids came around, he came around a little bit more. And then all the broken promises for me started to happen to my kids. So I was like, nah, we're not gonna keep doing this. Like, let's go ahead and break this curse now. You know what I mean? So.
Do you wish he was more present, looking back?
Looking back, I do. I do. There was a lot of things that I didn't realize until I became a grown man that I needed, you know, that I did not get.
Now, I don't know that I've spoken to my father or seen him in about 3 or 4 years.
My relationship with my father has grown in the last, I would say in the last 20 years. When I was younger, when I was a teenager and a young adult, it was touch and go big time. And it's funny, our relationship has grown because he's also a real estate broker. He's been one, of course, twice as long as I've been one, maybe even almost 3 times as long. And so because we have that common profession, it seems as though we talk a lot more. Extremely close.
What does closeness look like for you two?
Closeness looks like I can call him at any point in time for anything, for any reason, on any topic, and I feel I can be transparent with him in the discussions that we have, and I'll get sound, solid advice from him.
It's not close. It's definitely complicated because I'm a complicated person, and I'm gonna make it complicated, especially when you're absentee. You know what I mean? It makes it to the point where I feel like now, as a grown-up, I don't need you for anything. You know, I don't hate you. A lot of people like to say, "Oh, I hate him," and I got all this anger pent up, and I'm mad and angry. No, I'm not mad at nothing. I just don't know you. So a lot of times when he reaches out, like with my brothers and stuff, they embrace it a little more. I gotta admit, they embrace it a little more. And at this time in life, he's a decent person. He's a good dude. It's just I don't know you. You're a total stranger to me. So at the end of the day, it's like, do I really need another person in my life? Like, what is it you bring to my life right now that I need? I mean, it sounds callous and cold, but if he died today, I probably wouldn't care. You can say, ooh, what's wrong with that boy? You know what I mean? He got some anger issues. No, I don't. I had anger issues at 8 and 6 and 5 and 7 when he wasn't around.
My father, as I said before, was everything he needed to be. But my father wasn't involved in my life. My father was incarcerated in a maximum security prison 13 years of my life. That had a profound impact on me. I wrote my father letters every day. 1 year. Every day. And he never responded to one letter.
Our relationship has come a long way. He'll probably be surprised to know that, but it has come a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, mine's is it is non-existent, right? So, yeah, I mean, my father was in my life from when I was born to about 2, and then, we talked on very seldom occasions outside of that.
He missed a large part of my development as a person, you know. And I think as an adult, I just didn't really have space for him because I was trying to grapple with the impact of him. So like, my relationship with women have been impacted by my relationship with him. Like, just not being able to really connect with people and disconnecting from people in hurtful ways because of trying to protect myself. And I know a lot of that stems from him.
Really know much about the man. I don't know where he went. I don't know his middle name. There's a lot of things I don't know what he did in between all those years. Don't really care. You know, I don't really care. But at the same time, if you want to build a friendship, these are things you need to know. But then you have to be willing to have conversations to learn these things. And I don't really feel much like talking to him. I be busy. I work a lot. You know, I got my own family now, so I understand maybe you're feeling like you're towards the end of your life and you want to now reach out and build these bonds and stuff to write your life before you go whatever way you're going to go. But that's not my job to make you feel comfortable because you were not there to make me feel comfortable. So tough shit.
I'll say this too. I don't know about the experience of other brothers. My mother taught me how to love her. I'm not sure my mother taught me how to love other women. Right? My mentor, I have so many men in my life, I feel very fortunate. So it's interesting that I don't have my biological father, but I have so many men in my life that right now I could call for anything. They taught me what it meant to love, to be committed. They were the ones that showed me. And I think, I don't know what it is about seeing someone that looks like you modeling it, seeing it. I don't have the science behind that. I don't know what that is. But it made a difference.
And having the men set the standard for manhood, it really made it easy for me to define what manhood looks like, because these were gentlemen. These were men who would say, "Hey baby, how you doing?" They're talking to me as a man. "Hey, let me put something in your pocket." You know, these were men who would get on you for being disrespectful, who set a standard for loving and taking care of the women in our lives, little brothers and sisters. And so we had a community of men who defined manhood for themselves. And it wasn't about what they said, it was about what they did. And so if somebody was moving, we were all there. If lights needed to put up on a house, it was all there. If somebody had trouble, you know, whether it be jail, whether it be car accidents, I knew that it was the men who raised me who were doing things for people in the community. And so the example for what constituted manhood for me was set, and it wasn't singular, it was multiple. I got a chance to see everybody, and they were all the same way. Loving guys who happy, who worked hard to help other people.
What did you get in trouble for the most when you were young?
Probably talking back. Yeah, just talking back. I had a really smart mouth. And it got me in the most trouble.
You see any of those traits in your own kids?
Yes. 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 My daughter is...
Strong-willed?
Yes, she is me. She is me, 100%.
Before I started playing football, it was I used to fight. So I used to get suspended from school probably once a month.
What did you get in trouble for the most when you were young?
Not listening. I don't listen. I was hard-headed. I thought I knew everything. I still think I know everything. Shit.
You know, when I was really young, believe it or not, they thought I was gonna be just like a terrible adult because I really had a bad mouth when I was younger.
So not listening.
Yeah, I don't listen much.
Do you see that in either one of your kids?
Yeah, he kind of hard-headed too.
So your son mostly, not your
Yeah, I mean, they're both stubborn as shit. They're both stubborn, but she's stubborn because she believes she's smarter than everybody. He's stubborn because he has an attitude problem, like I had.
Trying to be too grown. Like, I grew up the only child for 9.5 years. My mother had me, and then she had my brothers 9.5 years later. And so I was around a lot of adults, and I thought that I was grown. And so it was literally like me trying to be involved in adult conversations, me having an opinion on certain things, me thinking I knew everything.
I got in trouble mostly for fighting. Got kicked out of school in 6th grade. But some people are passive aggressive. I grew up aggressive, and so if people said something, it was easy for me to fight. Learn later that how many options I had, and so that was a part of growing up is learning that your strength is in making good options, and so that was something I got from both my dad and my uncles. Is that your choices are everything, and you gotta learn to master those choices.
If you could change one thing about the way you were raised, what would it be?
Growing up, there was a lot, as with many black families, there was a lot of emphasis on church. And, church. And I think that, in a sense, our parents counted on the church to raise us, so to speak. There were no talks about credit. There were no talks about the importance of money and finances. The only thing we knew about finances was you get paid, 10% goes to tithes, you give a little to offerings, and that was just what you did, and maybe a little bit to the building fund. So,
if you could change one thing about the way that you were raised, what would it be?
Other than having a dad?
Yeah, it would have been nice to know how to be a dad before you get thrown in the fire. That would have been fucking great, but everybody doesn't have that privilege. So you can watch a lot of television shows, right? You could build a dad. You watch this show, that show, and you get a trait from him, you get a trait from him, you get a trait from him. Say, okay, that's what it's supposed to be like, and then you try to go from there. And I'm saying that being funny, but that's really what I did. I really had to look at television shows like, okay, well, maybe you got an imaginary dad. You're at home, you don't have a fucking dad, so you can make one up, and it is. And so then you have your brothers, so I got you got an older brother. Sometimes he had to play the dad role, but after a while, you want to challenge that because you're not too far up under him. So you're like, fucking dad. So you're not listening to nothing he says.
To be honest, my mom, Cheryl Sills, did an amazing job, man. My mother, I'm really transparent because I think this is important. My mother was a functioning addict. My mother was on crack cocaine, right? She was functioning though. She went to work every day. As a parent, she did an amazing job as a single parent. But sometimes I tell people, I said this, I wonder what my life would be like if I had a dad.
So it would have been nice to really know what it was like beforehand. And if he's listening, he'll understand that. And then maybe he'll understand me a little better.
So I think that's the one thing I would change, because even though we grew up in the hood, it was the murder capital in Oakland. My mother was a functioning addict for a period of my childhood. But even then, she was still a really amazing parent. She planted seeds in my head, like, you're going to college. She never went to college herself. She was like, you're going to college. I didn't even know what college was. That for me, that was her trying to give me a pathway. She gave me Souls of Black Folk when I was 12 years old. I didn't understand that book at 12 years old, but she gave me that book, and like for her to raise me the way she did, you know, I would have homework on weekends. I would go to summer school. I didn't have bad grades. Like my mother was like, school is not your first place to learn. You're gonna learn at home first. She was very disciplined, very disciplined. I say all that to say that when I think about my childhood, I think I had a beautiful childhood.
If you could change one thing about the way you were raised, what would it be?
Nothing.
All of it feels purposeful.
Yeah.
But even knowing all that, like, I think that's what I would change is like having a father. You know, father. I think we should not do stuff like you the mom and the dad. Saying Happy Father's Day to moms. Like, no disrespect. If a mom holds down the house, she's doing an amazing job. But you can't discount what both parties offer a child. You just can't. Like, I can never be my son's mom. Never. She's an amazing mom. I can't replace that. I can't be that. Right? But I know when he comes to me, he's yearning for something that he can't get from her.
Do you parent the way you were parented?
In some respects I do, but in others I don't. It's a different time, it's a different age, and
What's different? What's the same?
What's different is technology. What's the same to me is respect for your elders, respect for your mom and your dad.
Unfortunately, I try to be like a better father, you know, and try to reach out more, but my son is in Las Vegas, I'm in Sacramento, so there's a big difference right there. But like even when he was out here, I found myself being a lot like my dad, you know, more like, okay, you know, financial than being necessarily present right there every day with him, you know.
The biggest difference now is to be more lenient, you know, to want to learn and engage, you know, every time that we spend together. And the biggest thing that throws, you know, a wrench and all that is the technology. You know, she's a teenager now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find yourself parenting the way you were parented?
In some instances.
What's different and what's the same?
So definitely my mom, pretty much, you know, I had chores to do. I had responsibilities early. So that part of it, I definitely push on my kids. Like, you need to know how to take care of yourself. If you leave my house, at least you know how to cook. You have to know how to clean.
And from time to time, I'm like, hey, you know, so what do you do on the phone? Oh, you know, I like to look at this. I'm like, oh, you do? You know, just so I can be up to date, like, so I know what she's into, what's available. And so, you know, if I notice something's, you know, not appropriate or, you know, on that borderline, I'd be like, okay, we need to leave that alone, and I'm gonna go ahead and shoot a text to your mom, so, you know, she could be on the lookout for that too, because like I said, just the exposure between, you know, body image and, you know, the stuff that's for adults, you know, that these kids don't understand, but, you know, they see it. I just try to be that engaged, because I know that phones, social media, all that stuff that's there and can disappear, you know, can leave a lasting impression, or for that matter, you know, obscure what we think reality is, you know, what they try to grasp for, that's not real. And so I just, that's how I feel about technology. I mean, it's there, it's a great tool, but I want to make sure that she's off of it enough where, you know, she's forced to either enjoy herself with the family or be bored, you know.
Well, of course, my biggest influence was my father, God rest his soul. And so, you know, he was a great role model for me in terms of, you know, what I wanted to be as a father. There were things, however, that he did that I am doing a little differently. such as I am a lot more involved with, my kids in terms of I'm showing up to the awards assemblies, I'm showing up to the open houses, no matter what. My father, God bless him, he kind of left that stuff to my mother to do.
But it seems as though that's where a lot of the social interaction is going. It's going virtual.
You have teenagers, so
Yes.
have you discussed sex with them yet?
I have. Very different conversations. Oh my God.
I'm going to be instructing both my children to be abstinent. If you are not, then you need to protect yourself. That is not what I am advocating.
Yeah, he's allowed to do pretty much whatever he wants as long as he's protected. And she can do nothing. And that's just a double standard that the world is going to have to live with.
If you are going to make these decisions, you need to be safe. You need to, it's normal, for teenagers to feel like that. I was a teenager. I get it. But just be smart about it. You don't want to be a teenage parent. You need to, make logical decisions. And
How were conversations about sex handled when you were growing up?
Oh, it was straight abstinence. Oh yeah, 100%. Especially going up Church of God in Christ. Oh, it was sin. You don't do it till you're married. It's a sin in the Bible, and you need to repent or you go in hell. And it was, all those fallacies that we make up, which may be true, may not be true, but I mean, honestly, looking back, all it did was just make someone more curious, I think.
The forbidden fruit.
Yeah, you tell me I can't. I want to see if I can get away with it.
And how old were you when you first had sex?
14,
The girl was same age or older?
same age.
I don't know, it's different because I gave her the game. I'm like, look, man, this is what little boys is about. This is what they want. This is what they're gonna do. And they did that. And she just fell right into it. I just was like, man, we had this talk.
Is it her falling into it simply because she had sex, or do you feel like she was manipulated? Do you feel like she got gamed?
Yep, gamed. Definitely. Like everything that I told her that boys were going to do, she just fell right into it. And I'm just like, oh my God. Because it's like, as a father that's there, like, dude, we talk. Like, what is wrong? What are you not getting?
I'm not going to talk about intercourse with my daughter, so your mama might have to handle that. I can talk about what I'm going to do to the nigga if he tries to have intercourse with you. I can do that well.
I just mainly was just telling him, just to make sure you always wearing the condom. I remember when I was young, you be wanting to do something, so you might want to risk it. So no, none of that.
We've touched on promiscuity. We've touched on what I like to specialize in is the behavior of boys. So as far as the actual sex, protection, contraceptives, I left that to her mom.
Conversation that will take place later with your daughter, is that something that you feel is her mom's responsibility, or will you as a...
I'm definitely going to be all in her ear 24/7. I think that's 50-50 right there. I don't know if not more the dad, because, we know how men think, you know what I mean? And so I just want to just pour as much as I can into her about just how to carry yourself, because how you carry yourself as a woman is how as a man is going to respond to you.
The fact of the matter is, you know what you've done your whole life, and you don't want that done to your daughter. It's like, some of the shit you did, right? And it's not all good. It's not all good, as a male, especially, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we were absolute predators, and that's what masculinity was. It was praying, how many girls can you get? How many numbers did you get? Did you have some sex? You're 12, 13. Did you have sex? You can't even have an orgasm. Nothing comes out of nothing. You're still trying to have sex because you want to say you had sex. So when you have that image burned into your head, and you look at your little girl, you're like, nah, that's not happening to her. Not absolutely not. And you would rather die or kill a motherfucker before you let that happen to her.
at the same time, you remember being that little young man and dreaming about shit like that. You find little Playboy magazines and shit, your little dick get hard, and you start thinking about sex and stuff like that. So you kind of, for some reason, we always, hey, did you got a girlfriend yet? You know what I mean? You kiss her yet? We promote it for the male. I don't know why we do it, but we do it because it's okay. It's just part of the world to where everybody has to accept their role in it. You know what I mean? Sometimes you get the long end of the stick, sometimes you get the short end. As far as that, you guys are taking the short end of that. But
it takes a while for a young man to mature. Girls on average mature a lot faster than boys, especially in college. And so I just always let her know, these guys that you're going to run into and that you're going to encounter, they're not mature. They're not going to be, most of the time, majority of the time, they're not going to be as mature as you. So, and there's going to be a lot of game playing. And, but you don't have to stand for it. You can demand that they act a certain way, especially towards you. They only can treat you the way you allow them to treat you. And so, and that goes for mistreating you too. So I just don't want her to be anybody's doormat. I don't want her to be a man's doormat.
How old were you when you first had sex?
11.
Was the girl older or the same age?
Older.
How much older?
Couple years.
How were conversations about sex handled when you were growing up?
I didn't have any. I don't ever think I've had that conversation with my mom. My dad offered to take me to Bunny Ranch at 13. So you can kind of get the drift of the different parenting,
How were conversations about sex handled when you were growing up? Or was there one?
I can't remember any conversations about sex with my mom or dad.
How old were you when you first had sex?
Oh, you know what? I was pretty young. I was probably about 12 or 13.
Was the girl older or same age?
Same age.
Is it fair to say that most of your ideals about sex, the actual act, and even how it relates to masculinity was just something that happened within your peer circle?
Correct.
How dangerous is it, or is it dangerous, to allow that conversation to only be taking place with people who are at the same level of awareness that you are?
I think it's very dangerous, because when you're talking about at the same level, most likely you're talking about kids or teens, preteens, young adults that are very limited in scope when it comes to experience in life general. So I think that is very dangerous.
And I don't expect them to, abide by the decision that I made. But my wife is actually the only person that I've, ever been with, sexually. And I made that decision, sort of at a young age, because I saw in high school my friends who were promiscuous, and I saw the turmoil that they went through. And I saw in college, friends of mine that were promiscuous, and I saw what they had to endure, both male and female. And I don't have time for that. And I know that's not something that is popular or, that's some widespread message. And it wasn't even something that was a part of my upbringing, other than, my parents telling us, don't bring any babies, here. You need to go to school, don't bring any babies to this house because we're not going to help take care of them. But it was just more so, I wasn't going to deal with all of the drama that came with some of those choices and some of those decisions. And I wasn't going to be a teen father, and I just made those decisions very early on.
And it's admirable to run into anybody that has waited until they were married. One, because you want to make sure that you with somebody that you actually like, because it's a lot easier, it would have been a lot easier to raise them in the same household. So making sure that when they make that decision to have sex, that it's, you know, it's somebody that, hey, if you mess around and have this kid, you know, it's a lot to it. It's a whole lot to it. And, you know, at 12, 13, they looking at me like, Dad, you know? Yeah.
Do you have conversations with your kids about how to process their emotions?
Now that's where I think there's a little disconnect. My son is very in touch with his emotions. My daughter is a little less in touch and a little more like me.
I mean, does gender play a role in that?
Yeah, I think it plays a huge role. Because I'd be a different person with daughters. I probably, if I had 7 girls instead of boys, or even 1 daughter instead of, you know, all boys.
It's much different navigating through life as a black man than it is a black woman. You know, it's just very, very different.
I'll work 80 to 90 hours a week. Because I know my boys are solid, you know, they don't, you know, all the emotional stuff, they don't need all the time. They're rough, they're, you know. But with a little girl, I don't know that I'd work 20 hours a week. I'd probably homeschool. I'd probably, and don't get me wrong, I grew up with a mother, man, that just, she was a beast, still is. You know what I mean? She took care of and handled everything. But I would hate for my daughter to have to work as hard as my mom does.
It's definitely different with girls. Like, you know, they're more tender, so you can't just be as blunt. But, you know, there's definitely a lot of bluntness in the way I communicate with her.
There isn't really a lot of value placed on the black man or the black woman. And so I think that you have to have separate conversations because of the way the society and the media views the two. Society and the media views the black woman as something that they can actually use and capitalize off of, and the black man is a liability.
I try not to make her too masculine, and I definitely don't, you know, make my sons too feminine. But, you know, the truth is going to be the truth, regardless of how you feel about it.
Do you tell your boys one thing and girls another? Or?
I do. I'm really bad at that as far as boys. I use the term quit acting like a girl or quit crying like a girl. And I know it's not good, but there's no other way for me to, I mean, there are other ways, but that's the easiest way for me to relate it to him. And with her, I'm a little softer. Well, a lot softer, I should say. It's because, you know, as dads, we want our boys to grow up and not be pushovers, not be victims, not be, lack of a better term, punks. So we take a little more stern approach with them, I think.
Is it okay for boys to cry?
Yeah, you can cry. Just don't cry that much. You don't cry a lot. You know what I mean? Like, get the shit over with and knock it out. Go knock it out. Go get that cry real quick. You know, you don't want to cry and break down and see it rolling over the floor and shit. Nah, you don't want to do none of that.
Is it okay for boys to cry?
When they're hurt.
Like physically hurt?
When they're physically hurt. And then even sometimes, you know, we say, suck it up, deal with it. Are you bleeding? No, deal with it.
Do you cry?
Yes.
From physical pain only, or?
No. You know, maybe growing up, yeah, physical pain, but as an adult, more probably emotional stress. The same reasons I'm telling my son not to cry, probably.
Like, my dad's the emotional one. He cries. he's a crier.
Is it okay for boys to cry?
Absolutely. I think it's definitely okay, for them to cry and express emotion, and especially our young black boys. It's just ingrained in us that you can't cry, you can't express emotion. That is considered weak, and I have a problem with that because at the end of the day, I have to live this life. I don't live my life for you. I don't live my life for all these other people and what your standard is. And just on a very basic level, I have to take care of myself. And when that Southern California Edison bill comes to my house so I can keep my lights on, only my name is there. Society's name is not on there. Society's not paying my bills, and that's the same lesson that I teach my kids. You have to make those decisions, for yourself. So if you have to express that emotion in that way, then you do that.
I think it's fine with him having a, I don't want to say sensitive side, being aware of his sensitive feelings that may come up sometime. But I am rather old school when it comes to that. I'd rather have him embrace his masculinity, you know what I mean? Try to go more that way. If he wants to lean towards his mother's point of view, that's great too. But if he starts acting a little soft, I just can't see it working out.
In most instances, men are the stronger vessel physically, right? And so we can endure a little bit more on that. But when it comes to the emotional stuff, we don't have a chance. Y'all win every time, I'm telling you. And that's one thing that I wanted my boys to have, is their mother that would give them that emotional support. Playing football all my life, I've been taught to just be tough. Just be tough. Just get up. You got hit, you hurt, get up. If it ain't broke, then you can run again. You know what I mean? Don't, what you crying for? There ain't no reason to cry. You know what I mean? Ain't nobody else crying. They getting hit just as hard. But get up. You're so what? You failed. You got to get up. Keep moving. Which has kind of helped to build, the man that I am when it comes to adversity. But, in my house, it's okay to cry. You didn't do it right. You want to figure out. You're frustrated. You don't know. Good. Don't go punch walls and, create extra expenses. Don't go hit other people, because that just makes your life worse. You know what I mean? So crying is good, even if you got to go do it by yourself, just to release the frustration. But it also gives you an opportunity to clear your mind and think about what you have to do next.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
Growing up, I wanted to be a marine biologist, believe it or not. I like the water, I like the ocean, so I wanted to be a marine biologist. Hence, I applied to colleges by the water, San Diego State, Hawaii Pacific. I even applied to Bethune-Cookman in Daytona Beach, Florida, which is a predominantly black university. And then I somehow made my way into criminal justice, being my minor, or my major at Florida State. And then just kind of went into the law enforcement field. I guess I was inadvertently following in my dad's footsteps and didn't even realize it, to be honest with you.
I knew ever since I was in first grade that I wanted to be a teacher.
I heard the word engineer, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. And that always stuck with me.
Did you pursue that when you were in the military? Is that what you did?
In the military, I was a part of the civil engineering squadron, so yep, I was able to become that engineer.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
An NBA superstar. Yeah, I thought I was, gonna go to the pros and be rich and buy all my family members giant houses and all of that. But yeah, I didn't like to listen. That was my problem. Like, I had too much of the street mentality, and that was more important than focusing on basketball.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to play football. Thought for sure I was gonna. I would play football.
Yeah, for me, it was either a basketball player or a football player.
I wanted to be a basketball player. NBA basketball player, just like Magic Johnson.
And that's where the people were that I could identify with, right? They were either on the basketball court or on the football field.
When all we see of success is the football and the basketball player, then we all strive to be the football and the basketball player. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? But that's what's celebrated. So I think examples are important for us to see what we can strive to be and aspire to be.
Alternate examples.
Alternate
There's
examples.
Plenty of athlete examples.
There's too many.
Exactly.
You know, too many.
I was an athlete.
Are you?
Yeah, my dad was an athlete.
Really?
So I didn't become an academic until I stopped becoming an athlete.
What led you into the field that you're in now? Professor, science, language?
Community impact. I was, the reason I got into science was I was competitive. And so being competitive, if the science was the difficult thing that all the smart people did, I was like, hey, let's do that. And so I got into science, not because of a love for science, that came later, but for a desire to do the thing that was considered the most elite thing intellectually, and I enjoyed the challenge. And so after I grew older, I learned to love science, but I didn't love the science opportunities I had available. So then I fell in love with science teaching, became a science teacher, and then decided I want to study this deeply.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Oakland.
Much rather us strive to be the general manager, the coach, the trainer, and have a 20, 30, 40-year career, you know, the team physician, the owner. You know what I mean? The athlete is just one cog in one spoke in the wheel. And it was a very short shelf life. Let me be the owner.
So you can find a kid who can't shoot but loves playing basketball. You ask them who they are, they'll tell you with great confidence, I'm a basketball player, because there's no counter narrative around them not being a basketball player. They believe it. They can see themselves that way. But for scientists, how often do we send a message that you should be a scientist, that there are people like you with your same swag, with your same culture, your same hairstyle, your same love of music, that are deeply involved in leading the science community. And so what we do in our camps is trying to send that message loud and clear, that not only is science a place for you, but it's always been historically a place where people of color shine.
So exposure, and that's what the images are. Those things become, again, a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, yeah, I can't say the Chinese or a person from India or Japan is a better engineer. No, engineering started in Africa. Maths and sciences started in Africa. That's our natural gift, if you want to talk about a natural gift, right? However, in American culture, you know, the emphasis is on, for black young boys, especially the athlete, the entertainer.
Part of the breakdown that I think Africans have experienced living in America, and I just want to be clear, when I say African, I'm talking about all African people, right? So born here, continental, because I do think we use these words interchangeable, and I just try to be intentional. So I think the breakdown is that if you're born here, the reality is you've developed some connection to white culture. So whiteness permeates throughout our community. So for me, that's the real breakdown. We don't have rituals. Let me rephrase that. We have very little rituals that are agreed upon rituals for the community that keeps us connected. It's those things. And for me, I think the way that we heal our community is actually reconnecting to us as African people. I think that's the job of African people that they should be committed to throughout their lives. We have to be mindful that their rituals in this culture dictates how we live. It dictates how we move. So if we don't have rituals to reflect who we are, then we'll always be connected to them. And so, you know, I understand like Valentine's Day just passed, Mother Day is coming up, and these things have meaning to people. And I think that's important. But I also recognize that those things don't reflect who we are as African people. Every environment controls. When students come into a classroom, they don't sit in the front of the classroom. There are no signs that says don't sit at the front of the classroom. If you go to the movie theater, you don't bring a tambourine. So there aren't signs in America on how to behave. They're all unspoken, but we all know them. And so I feel like it's the culture of whiteness in America that keeps us not being able to connect and disconnects us. That's why I think there's a complexity around whiteness that we don't really begin to explore, like how we've adopted whiteness in a black community and then turn it against each other. It's like we're practicing whiteness, but there's no white people in the room. It's just the value that's so strong, you know? So and when we talk about internalized racism, we never bring that up. We just talk about hair, and we talk about, you know, color of skin, but the distortions we don't really talk about. We don't really grapple with how we've internalized a lot of values that reflect white people and reflect white culture, and that we've bought into them. And we've begun to use them against each other.
I think that's one of the problems we have with specifically African Americans in this country. So many of us don't know our history. So since we don't know our history, we're not teaching our children our history. And since we're not teaching them our history, they have no sense of pride in who they are, in what we've accomplished, not only in Africa, but also here in the United States.
If you're a black child in America, being educated, public school, is the curriculum set up for self-hatred?
That's a challenging question, and I'll say the reason why it's challenging is because I think it's actually more set up to create a cultureless African. And I'm not sure that being a culturalist African is synonymous with self-hate, even though it could be. I was just stating earlier that I don't think children should watch Nickelodeon or Disney Channel. And particularly in my media class that I teach, we're examining media images. And I talk about the black and brown children that's on Nickelodeon and Disney, they're culturalists. So it's like they check the box like, oh, you all want to make sure there's cultural diversity. Here's your black, here's your brown, here's your Asian, like whatever. This is your minority. But none of their culture is exhibited. Not a language, not an accent, not clothing, not rituals, none of those things. So it's being culturalist. So when I think about our children in their schools, they aren't reading books that reflect their experience. I remember growing up and reading like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, Les Miserables. These were all the classics. I didn't read Up From Slavery. I didn't read, Souls of Black Folk. I didn't read about Paul Robeson. I didn't read the folk that were writing literature about the African experience in America. And I think that's still missing now.
Well, if you're raised anywhere in America, society is not going to tell you the true history of who you are. That's first and foremost. So if you're an African American expecting your children to learn who they are in public school, they're not going to get that at all. So I think it's extremely important and extremely necessary, and it has to be done in the home because that's where majority of this type of information is going to come from. I mean, the things that I've learned that I know related to African history and African American history, I didn't learn in college. I had to do my own research. Reading books that I was never exposed to, and authors I were never exposed to. Dr. Ben Yakinen, Ivan Van Sertima, Sheikh Anta Diop. These are Dr. John Henrik Clark. These are individuals that not only the schools are not preparing our children to know who they are. As black people, majority of us don't even know who these people are, unfortunately. There are.
Is that strategic?
I think it's absolutely strategic.
I do think there's a population of instructors that are more progressive, and so they're reading more critical literature, but I still think our books are missing. I still think our children aren't reading books about them. And so
in schooling, you think that's strategic?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I do think it's strategic. If you look at the CBEST, which is the test for instructors to become certified to teach in public schools, the test they have to study from is incorrect. It's inaccurate history. Anybody can check the facts on that. You go pick up the documentation, and they step that they have to study from for the test. The correct answer is incorrect. It's problematic. So that's part of the problem. The people that are learning this material, some of them might not have the wherewithal to say, hold on, this is inaccurate. But I can surmise that most of the folks don't know it's inaccurate. And so then they get in there, they just begin teaching. And
then
I
when
think
they're confronted with the truth, they defend the lie because they've been taught that is.
they defend the lie because, you know, it's like right now, they defend the lie because this is all they've known. So it reminds me of the slogan that's become so popular with our current presidential administration, making America great again. So I'm having my students read a book called Racist America by Joe Fagan. In this text, he breaks down the U.S. Constitution, the 55 white men, breaks down whiteness, white supremacy, offers a holistic understanding of history. And he says the central focus of building America happened upon slavery. And one of the things I begin to note in my lecture is that when we say make America great again, it's an oxymoron and a contradiction. America has always been great for white men.
The knowledge is out there. I mean, there are a multitude of websites you can go to where you can either listen to these audio tapes or the videos that they've done, or purchase the books of these individuals and learn who we are and what we did. Chancellor Williams' book, Destruction of African Civilization, should be a book every black person in the world reads. Specifically breaks down what happened to us.
I don't educate from my point of view. I'm doing a lot of research, a lot of studying. I'm giving them material so they can be critical thinkers.
It's just, our system is so indoctrinated with, and I don't know any other way of saying this but this, with whiteness, that as a black person, as a black child growing up in this country, everything is associated with white. For example, I'm a Christian, but and part of the problem I have with Christianity has to do a lot with the imagery. Everything, unfortunately, is white.
How early do you think African-based curriculum should be introduced to children? I mean, whether that be secularly in your working to get that indoctrinated into the school or in the home?
Well, I mean, my personal opinion, I don't think it's ever going to be indoctrinated into the school, not in this country. But as far as in the home, or if you're having some sort of classes that you do on a Saturday or on a Sunday of a group of kids, I would say anywhere from age 6 and up.
In our community especially, we have to be very explicit with our children about the importance of education and why it's important. And we also have to talk to them about the various options that are available. You know, even if college is not necessarily your thing, you need to find some kind of trade, but you need to go through some kind of schooling. You cannot just, high school cannot just be the end of it for you.
My educational background, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology from Morehouse College. I have a master's in education from Harvard University School of Ed. I have a doctorate degree in education leadership from UC Davis and also from Sonoma State University. And I have a online teaching credential from Merritt College, Community College in Oakland, California.
Morehouse man.
I am a Morehouse man, class of 02.
So I earned a biology degree from Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. I left Hampton and got a master's degree in educational psychology from the University of California, Santa Barbara. I also got a PhD in education from the University of California, Santa Barbara.
Hampton. Why'd you choose an HBCU?
I chose HBCU because one of the things that was interesting about that is a lot of the mentoring I was getting was saying this is the only time in your life where issues of race and racism were off the table. It is truly the time in your life where it's really about your merit and about you determining your success.
But I have a number of different black college graduates in my family on both sides, mother's side and father's side. And you know, it just felt that's where I wanted to be, that's where I needed to be. And honestly, that was the best educational decision for me to attend an HBCU. It gave me the confidence to be able to go to Ivy Leagues and UCs and really throughout the world with a greater sense of confidence and a greater sense of purpose and a greater idea of self, and really to be exposed to black people of all socioeconomic statuses, all walks of life, people from the Caribbean, people from Africa and Europe, just to kind of see the whole spectrum of black life in the black world is bigger than what we see on BET. You know what I mean? We're not a monolith.
My BA is from San Jose State in African American Studies and Sociology. My first master's is Africana Studies from SUNY Albany, upstate New York. My second master's is Psychology from USF. And I am applying to law school right now, so we'll see what that offers.
And so I think it's important for parents to sit down with their kids and have those conversations about the different options that they have and the different ways that they can get there. But they also have to stress to them that not doing it is just not an option. You have to be able to, my father would always tell us, you have to be able to write your own ticket. So he always talked about how we needed to pursue our education, but create options, for ourselves as well. And so I have those same conversations now with my own children.
I think people sleep on community colleges and the depth of education that you can receive there.
Man.
What are some of the most profound conclusions that you've come to at the community college level as it relates to your African American students?
Community college in California, these 115 community colleges up and down the state, 2.5 million students, the biggest college system in the world. Most of the students of color in California start off in the community colleges. Most African American males are going to start at the community college in California, more than the HBCUs, more than the UCs, more than the CSUs. That's what I found in my research. If you're an educator and you want to work with black youth or black young people, black students, the California community colleges is where they are. You can also go into the K-12 world, but I started off in the K-12 world. Once I got a taste of working professionally at the community college, it changed my life. And that's not to knock K-12, because we need good K-12 teachers and administrators. They feed the community college system. But if you are an educator and you want to be in the grassroots, it's not at Stanford, it's not at UCLA, and that's not to knock those schools. It's not at Cal Berkeley, it's not at San Jose State even. The grassroots is in the community college. It's a college that's in the community for people and members of the community. And so, that's where it is. I mean, Steve Jobs went to a California community college, the guy from Apple.
QP? What's Merritt?
QP, oh my, what the Black Panther Party starts at Merritt College, absolutely, how can I forget that? They started on, teaching informally African American studies informally at Merritt College, and that's where African American studies was born. Without them doing that at Merritt, I might not have a job today. And a lot of my colleagues wouldn't have, the jobs today teaching African American studies because it started at the community college.
This is the African American Studies Department that's housed within the Ethnic Studies Department. This department has a long legacy. Legacy extends to the Black Panther Party, and so I feel like I have a community obligation. So I find myself mentoring students, working with students, within their community, helping them in terms of community linkage, resources, housing, support with matriculation. So I actually find that area of my job to be more valuable, but we also have to do, what I consider to be the administration portion to make sure the department stays afloat.
I really am a proponent of the California community colleges, just like I'm a proponent of the historically black colleges. I think both give you a sense of self in their own specific ways, but the California Community College is, I really say that's the future of California.
So I'm at Merritt full-time as the department chair, and I teach here full-time as well. Every now and again I teach at San Francisco State, so I was there last semester teaching the Black Family course. Often I teach the Black Family course there and the perception of African American males. there. I'm also at Sonoma State. I teach how racism works, and then another course called Race, Ethnicity, and Class in the Media. So right now, those are the 3 institutions that I work at, just because I left to teach.
So the HBCUs are Wakanda, if you ask me. That's where Wakanda is. Your scientists, your doctors, your lawyers, your engineers, your judges, your professors, your dentists, etc. In the black world, 50, 60, 70% of those all come out of HBCUs. They're not coming from Stanford, they're not coming from San Jose State, you know, by and large. And again, that's not to knock Stanford. Stanford's a great university, hands down, you know, there's no disputing that. But if you're talking about the black world and where we traditionally have held a place of strength, economically, intellectually, whatever, you know, way you want to put it, or slice it, it's at the black college. So to make education, to make entrepreneurship, to make even working a 9 to 5 culturally cool, it starts with people that you can look up to, people that form those relationships with you, who might be your teacher, who might be the mechanic, who might be the business owner. You know, what I see in that is that those examples are what can become culturally cool.
And so he's working on textbooks that actually can change the culture of the person performing the experiment. Absolutely. Based on the demographic of the classroom.
And it's a genius. And Brian Brown is a genius. I know him. I know him and his wife and his kids. Genius family. You know what I mean? And it's sharp, intellectual, by example, and hands-on. So that's a great example of what you can aspire to be. Cool as a fan, sharp as a knife, you know what I mean? And a great leader and just a great guy. Hands-on with his kids and that type of thing. So hands-on with mentoring young people, I've seen it.
My name is Brian Brown. I'm a college professor. Specifically, I'm a professor of science education at Stanford University. I'm also the Associate Dean of the Graduate School of Education. One of the lies about science, and particularly science in the black community, and science in diverse communities, is that kids don't love science. And so the irony is that I often go out and do science with kids and communities, and it never fails. Once we get our hands on rockets, we're making clouds and bottles, there's a joy that happens always. And so I think the issue is not that whether or not people love science or not, or it's whether or not we get kids involved in the science that lets them know that I'm a part of it. I think the messages that come later tell kids that they shouldn't be a part of science, but they love it. So one of the ways that language can prevent people from becoming scientists is that we forget the power of language. So when you go to science classrooms, there's a subtle thing that happen. You've been around it before. People want to sound hyper-intellectual, so they use a large volume of academic terms. And no one takes the time to make sure that you understand them. So it's doing two things at once. It's saying, I don't understand the ideas that are being shared, but the second thing that it's doing is just sending you a message that people like me shouldn't be in science. And so the work that we do really tries to invert that, to make sure that we make sure that the ideas come first, and that we really do a good job of teaching the language. And what we found was that if you do it carefully, not only do students learn better, but they also feel a deeper connection to the discipline. One of the things that we really emphasize, we unpacked in our research, is the power of explanation. So here's a simple idea, is that the more I have to explain something, the greater the clarity. So the things that you talk most about are the things that you know most about. And here's a problem with a lot of modern science classrooms, is the person doing all of the talking is the teacher, which then ensures that the teacher knows a whole lot about the content, but how often do the kids get an opportunity to explain? So part of what we want to make sure teachers know is that if kids are going to really understand science concepts, they've got to be able to explain to failure. I need to be able to explain it wrong, get some feedback, explain it again, because as you explain, you go from a cloudy understanding to a full comfort level of expertise. That's one thing. The other issue is that the teacher needs to first figure out, well, where is the chemistry that the kids know? And how does chemistry exist in the lives of the kids? So the kids might understand a whole lot about how bleach can impact clothing, but they probably are not going to use words like double displacement bonds or valence layer of electrons. They're going to speak in the language that they learned it. So what we need teachers to do, and we train the teachers that we work with to do, is to understand where does the science live in the lives of the kids, where are their everyday understandings. Because at the end of the day, people know a lot about science, it's just not housed in science language.
We don't see the Brian Browns enough. We don't see the examples of just somebody who is high-level intellect but able to converse and relate it in a way for our youth that makes perfect sense. You know, we don't see that enough.
We've recently finished some new work around digital textbooks. So textbooks have not changed that much over the years. And so with the digital textbook, what you can do is you can embed video, you can embed simulations, you can embed tests so students can punch the information in and save it. And so we thought about it. Is there something really powerful that you can do in technology? So you might not be able to change a teaching force. So if we have a teaching force that's 71% white and female, it's going to be difficult to hire people of color to come in and take those positions. But there's no reason why the technology can't send you a message of belonging. So a couple of things that we started to do is, the first is that giving students options to put people like them in the textbooks. And what we found was the kids were ecstatic. So we have young women in hijabs who were able to drag and drop a woman who looked like them wearing the same hijab to make a scientific explanation. And what we found is a really powerful impact, because once these students were able to customize the textbook, and this is the making sure the music in the textbook sounds like the cultural music that they enjoy, making sure the faces that they drag into the textbooks look like them, is now we have a new era where we can send a message of belonging to kids in the textbook while allowing the textbook to do what it's always done, is to give information. So now you can do two things: give information in a way that's meaningful, but also send a really powerful message about who gets to be involved in science.
What conclusions did you come to about the significance of representation as it relates to educational instruction?
So for us, some of the conclusions that we got to were really rooted in really unpacking the kind of the broader social and psychological issues associated with teaching and learning. Like, you can tell me I can't be a part of the community, right? You can tell me passively, but the other message is really powerful. As we're moving forward and pushing educators to think about better ways to use educational technology, I mean, we're screaming from the mountaintops. You cannot forget race, gender, and culture in these interactions. In fact, if you want people to really have equity, you allow the kids to produce authentic images of what it means to be a student. And what you're going to get is better quality textbooks with powerful representations of people of every sort getting access to science. And so we need to counteract those narratives that say, you know, young women of color can't be scientists. One, it's not true. And two, the technology gives us a way to leverage that message and send it directly to the kids. Every kid, from the day they're born, there's no reason why they can't be surrounded by people who are like them, teaching them science.
I'm always engaged in my child's educational process. So I'm calling teachers, offering up my support, and not just during Black History Month, because I feel like that's the other thing. Is like, ooh, I'm an educator, let me help y'all during Black History Month. Although I do think it's important, because I feel like a lot of schools struggle with that time period. They don't understand what that time period symbolizes and how they should utilize it. And so I feel like they struggle with, okay, here's a month that is quote unquote allocated to people of African ancestry. What do we do? And I think a lot of them are trying to be PC. And so they're trying to figure out, how do I navigate this really murky area? Because race, even in 2019, race is a very murky conversation. And so because it's murky, people struggle with, what can I say? What should I say? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? And I don't think white America takes it upon themselves to ask, is this appropriate?
Top 3 things that parents can be doing in the home to set their kids up for success.
Gotcha. Okay. So I want to talk to parents first. The thing that parents can do that kids have no control over is setting habits. And so there's something powerful about a kitchen table. If your kid comes home and every day they're at a table, and I don't care if your table was made of marble, diamond, glass, or cardboard fold-up table, sitting at the table and doing 20 minutes of work every day is a powerful habit to set. And so if your kids are doing that and you introduce some science to that, simple science experiments that you can buy online, you can find YouTube experiments. If you do that on a regular basis, once, twice a week, you'll look up and your kids won't know, well, why do I love science so much? And so also for parents, the second point I want to make is there's no need to be an expert. Is the point of science is to learn things that you don't know. So entering into an activity with the child saying, hey, let's learn this together is really powerful. It creates an environment where kids know that I can go from I don't know it to I'm comfortable when I know it. And the best way to do that is for parents to sit down with them and to be honest and say, hey, I don't know this, but let's figure this out together. The third thing you can do is to make sure your kids see themselves in the areas that you want them to see success. And so as much as I grew up idolizing athletes and musicians and those people who are around me, I was fortunate enough to see doctors and see community leaders, to see teachers who I can say, these are the people who I want to be like. And so we should be very explicit about that.
There's things I do with my son every day. I read to my son every day. Every day. I don't care. Every day. I read to him. There's days I'll be like, yo, I'm so tired. I do not feel like reading. We read this book 100 times. Like, I don't, like, there's often time. Every day.
We're going to talk about relationships. Black men, black women, competing or cooperating?
Cooperating.
But as far as the black man and the black woman, I think that a woman has to allow the man to be a man, but a man's got to be capable of being that man in order for the woman to allow it.
I think the best part of my relationship with my current wife is that we like each other.
It's a tug of war on both ends. You know, you get a woman who may have had whatever issue she had growing up with man or father, or whether it was relationships previous to, and then you take a man who never learned how to be a man and you put those two together and they breed children, it's going to be a constant battle and back and forth.
You know, her as a person, you know, who she is as a person, like, if we never got together, like, she'd be an awesome person to me, period. And that's not just talking from a place of being in love and you know, googly eye, and I'm saying, like, just watching her from a distance.
How important that is in a relationship to be friends, to really be friends.
It's more important than the love, actually.
It's a lot of competition, and you know.
What are some black women doing to create that competition?
Well, I think in a lot of cases, they don't really know how to allow that male to be the leader. And rightfully so, because so many of them come from backgrounds where they have had to be the leader because the male was either absent or unconscious or dysfunctional for whatever reason. So they're accustomed to stepping into that leadership role, whereas a lot of us as males view that as a threat to us as men and respond competitively.
You know, as far as the competition, I really don't see us having a role in it. I think the competition thing is more of a woman thing. They feel the need based on the way society is rigged up to compete with us.
So I think that's one of the byproducts of slavery, is the fact that too many of our black females have been put into positions where they have to be the leader of the household, of the family, or be that. And when they get in a relationship, they don't know how to release it because they've been accustomed to being in that role.
But if you got a man that's out there, no matter if you make more money or not, if he's working his ass off every day, coming home, doing his thing, trying to be the best person for his family, you allow that man that position of the head of the household, no matter if you feel you are or not. And a lot of times, women do forget that part, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot that goes into that man being a man. Like, hey, I understand that I may not be a billionaire, but I'm working really hard to take care of my family. So the least I can do is come home and be treated like a male. I mean, and sometimes they miss that. So it's kind of sad.
So for black men, We need to understand, first of all, what it is to be a man. Too many of us really have no clue. Well, don't have a clue. And for a variety of reasons, primarily because there was not maybe a conscious, viable male in my life. But that's where it starts, I believe. We need to understand, what is it that makes up a man?
And part of the black struggle in this country is we are not stepping up as men and leading our women and leading our families in the way that we should be. And leading and being and asking your woman to be submissive does not mean you just do everything I say because I say it. And sometimes that's what women hear. And unfortunately, sometimes that's what men are thinking.
And I think particularly with the black male-female relationship, we get a lot into about misogyny. We struggle. As a community, we struggle. I think black men, including myself, we all have to address the level of misogyny that exists in our psyche and in our behaviors. And when I say misogyny, I define it as a hate and or disdain for black women that also includes objectification of women. And I know when people hear hate, they go, oh my God, I don't hate black women. But if you only value a woman for her body, then that is essentially hating her, because that's not her essence.
Because a lot of guys want to walk around and call themselves a man, but they're acting like children. And they're not men at all. But you can't tell them that, because this is all I've been known. This is my exposure. This is what I know. So it's got to be some consistency across the board about what it is to be a man.
And then I also challenge some things, because I think we're in a day and age where everything is toxic masculinity. And I'm like, let's push back. Everything can't be toxic masculinity. So for instance, if there's a man, he's sitting at a table with two women at a cafe. Another man comes in and he's being extremely disrespectful and he tries to harm one of those women physically. Those women at that table will want him to do something. They will want him to be aggressive. They will want him to protect them. Right? So sometimes for me, we have to put things in perspective around how people are socialized and what are the implications of the socialization. Now, I'm clear. Men that are socialized by women or men in this day and age will have a level of masculinity that's toxic. I'm clear on that. I just want us to not over generalize every behavior as being that. Now, in Africa in particular, and when I say this, I want to be mindful that when you make generalizations about the continent that are overly stated, they're going to be inaccurate, positive or negative. There's 54 countries, vast history, okay? But when you look at ancient Africa, and let's look at the West in particular, the difference in terms of roles in men and women was based in physiological. It wasn't based in gender norms. There was a community value over health and well-being. There was also community value around family. Women were not allowed to work outside for long periods of time, nor pick up heavy objects. It wasn't because women weren't stronger, couldn't do it themselves. They had to protect what? The womb. Because if family is important, you have to protect the reproductive system. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't understand the context of those things. What did the black man look like pre-enslavement? What did the black woman look like pre-enslavement? What was that relationship like? What was family like? It's so important that we offer a different starting point for the African experience, that it cannot start in America. It cannot start during slavery. It must start at our healthiest point, pre-transatlantic slave trade, pre-Arab slave trade, Greek and Roman invasion, Folks putting lines all on the continent, so now it's separated. You know, the colonization, the imperialism. It must go back. You can go 5,000 years. And what I tell people, when we go back 5,000 years, 6,000 years, and look at some of those earlier civilizations, it was not a utopia, but it was the healthiest point of Africans. So for me, it's like we go and we study that so we can figure out how do we have healthiness right now. And so for me, every generation's job is to evolve the culture. But if our children aren't connected to their culture, what are they evolving? Western ideas? Giving my students some historical context about who they are helps them to have a different relationship with who they are and their community. And I think that's a part of the healing. Like, you're greater than the experience of our ancestors, some of our ancestors being enslaved. In the social psychology course, we bring up a lot of African-centered psychologists. So we talk about Baba Wade Nobles, Dr. Linda James Myers. We're talking about, Baba Naim Akbar, Dr. Kaban, he just passed away on the 31st. We're looking at, how are they defining our illnesses? How are they defining the conflicts, the hardships? We're not looking at, Erickson and Freud and the Western psych. We're not allowing Europeans to define what's unhealthy for us, right? Because, you look at Erickson's psychosocial development model, it's some value in there, but he never factors in race, never factors in poverty, capitalism, and so I think it's important. And so even in that class, a lot of students are being like, there's such thing as African psychology? What is that? Who are these people? And I'm like, and I'm saying that, like, well, some of these people right here in their community, like, we're in Oakland, like Baba Wade is here in Oakland. Oh, for real? He alive? Like they don't, for them, it's just such a disconnect. So I love teaching that class. And, I went to school for psychology, and one of the things that I experienced is being in white spaces, learning about white psychologists and their diagnoses of people in general, and saying to myself in those classes, this doesn't apply to my community. You can go to almost any major university that's giving out degrees in psychology, social work, MFT, marriage and family therapy, and they're doing maybe 1, 2, max 3 classes on diversity. And they're supposed to be working and supporting people. It's harmful. So for me, that class, I'm trying to awaken folks, because I have students like, I want to be going to psychology. I'm like, have you thought about Florida A&M? They have an African-centered psychology program.
A lesson or experience?
I tell them all the time, it's about your choices. Life is about the choices that you make. So, if you make the right choices, you're going to be successful. If you make the bad choices, you're going to have a hard time,
Choose your friends very carefully and who you associate with and who you hang out with, because one decision can change the rest of your life.
That's true. Being a convicted felon, there's certain doors that will never be opened again. Certain doors that were already, half shut anyways, being a black man. But yeah, once you get that stamp, it's over with. So that's, choices.
I say to people all the time, and I really hold this close to me, is that life is about choices. And, people have to understand that, God gave us all free will. Nobody has to do anything for you. Nobody has to look out for you. Nobody has to support you. And so when people choose to do that, you need to be appreciative and you need to be grateful, because we live in a society and we live in a culture now where everybody is about themselves and everybody is about, again, I need to secure my bag and I need to get my business off the ground. I need to do this for myself. And so we don't, and especially in the black community, we don't work in collaboration the way that we need to. And unfortunately, sometimes we do get something off the ground that is collaborative, then we allow ego and jealousy and personality conflicts to destroy that.
I often explain to him, like, the reason why we have a relationship is because of effort. So it's effort and it's presence, just being around, you know. It takes effort to be around. It takes effort to have a relationship. It takes with anybody, let alone your father or your mom or your sister or your brothers. It just, you have to want to do it, and then you have to do it.
My big thing is I am huge on, regardless of your stance, regardless of what you believe in and what you feel, believe it because you believe it, not because it's popular opinion.
You know, you just can't let other people cast what they think and their insecurities and their life's garbage on you. I carry my own bags. I don't need yours too.
Most difficult decision you've ever made? Either one that was difficult to come to, or after you made the choice realized how difficult it was?
Leaving Fresno. The kids were younger. For me, I thought it was always important that a mother has a chance to nurture the kids up until they got a certain age, but that, you know, a man is to stick around and to, you know, be influential in one way or another. So I left Fresno 7 years ago. They were 8. So I went from having my kids every week, every other week, for a week at a time, to having them on the weekends and then holidays. And so leaving on the hopes that when they turned 12 that they would finally get a chance to come live with me here was tough. It was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. As a man, you have to, there's a fork in the road where you have to sacrifice one thing or another. And here, it just, I was able to work more, and I was able to be more of a provider because I could make more money. And so I moved just on the strength that I'd be able to do more for them. So that was the hardest. That was the toughest. And then at 12, you know, hoping they come and I get to, you know, be a full-time dad to my own kids, right? Their mother reneges. So now I feel like I did all this for nothing, right? Here I am preparing a place for my sons. You know, they got beds, they got dressers and plenty of clothes, both houses. And now she's like, no, I can't let them go. And I'm like, now the hardest thing for me not to do is come up there and go upside down. Right? I want my sons. So that was the hardest, but like I said, effort is everything. So on the weekends, when I do have them, you know, it's we're doing everything we could have possibly did within a week. Like, even if I don't sleep for 2 days, we're in the gym at, like, now we'll go to 24 hours at 3 in the morning. You know what I mean? 4 in the morning, like, we shooting, you know, doing layups and practicing and doing all the stuff that I can't do during the week. So, you know.
Hardest lesson you've ever learned?
One bad decision can change your life forever. Just one. As brief as it may be.
Hardest lesson you've ever learned?
Nobody's perfect. Since I've been here, all my heroes have failed me. So to see them go from superhero to human is the hardest lesson I've ever.
That you're not perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things that are unwise, We're all going to do things that we shouldn't do. But to forgive yourself and move forward.
I think professionally I've accomplished a lot, but it doesn't mean as much to me personally. I mean, externally it might seem like it means more, but I think my family, my kids are probably my greatest accomplishment right now, to see that maturation and that work.
My daughter. Yeah.
I heard that.
Yeah, my daughter. That's by and large my greatest accomplishment.
And if my wife can say, yo, you've been there for me, you've been good to me, I appreciate you. And my son could say, you've been a good dad. My daughter said, you've been a good dad. Those things are probably greater than anything I could do in my profession.
My greatest accomplishment is yet to come. Let's just say that. I'm on my way.
What's the dream or goal that you have for your family? So like when people talk about living their best life, when you look at the future, your children, later in life, 10, 15, 20 years, what does that look like for you?
I think it's just having everybody in one room, smiling, happy, and excited about being together. You know what I mean? I think that's the ultimate goal for me, is to just get to a place where like all my sons like each other and love each other enough that when they're grown, like we just continue to have Christmas every other year together.
I would love to have 3 college graduates. That would be awesome. But just to have successful children, like, you know, whatever venture they choose to go down.
You know, I think for me, I want to see my daughters surpass everything me and my wife, right, have done, and I want them to be able to look to us as being an example, right, of what a union should be. Because again, I didn't get a chance to really see that. I was inside of my household, right. I had to look outward. So I want to create that, and then I want me and my wife. My dream is for us to never get so consumed, right, with our kids that we then lose focus or lose touch in us, right? Because we're gonna be sitting on the porch 60 years old, right? It's just me and her, right? So
yeah, that's right.
My biggest thing though is being able to pass the baton and for them to be able to run their leg of the race even stronger than we have.
Whatever I've achieved, that you guys take what I've achieved and you make it even more. You expand it even further. You make it even greater. To me, that's the ultimate gift, you know, is that my children do better than what I have done, and their children do better than what they have done.
Progress.
I call that progress. Now, some people have debate about what's better. See, to me, I don't feel better is necessarily equipped to money. I think be a better human being. Be a better person. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Be better. And that's, to me, it's a success. It isn't also, it's not monetary or materialistic. It's you as a person.
And if my family is doing the will of God, then that is all I can ask and all that I want, whatever that will is. And as far as for myself and my wife, I'm just loving each other more and more each day. I'm being more in love 10 years, 15, 30 years from now than we are today. I'm being faithful to each other in every aspect and spreading that love throughout our family and setting the example for the generations to come.
So it'd be to have my kids close to me and to be able to, and to be close to them while they're close to me, you know what I mean? And just to be able to I think for me as a man, like, I want to give back, you know what I mean? Like, I just really want to give to my kid. I want to give them everything I learned, you know what I mean? Like, and it hurts me that I'm not able to do that, so.
Greatest fear for your children's future?
So that's my biggest fear is them not knowing their worth or not knowing how important and how loved they are.
That's my greatest fear is there's just been so many things that we as black people have been through and that we still endure, that I think our future is in great hands, but sometimes I doubt it. I want to believe that our best years as a community is ahead of us, with my daughter and their daughters being part of that community. Sometimes there's doubt, and so and for her personally, my greatest fear is that she get with a knucklehead. But then, I mean, we if we're going to talk about community, we bear some responsibility in that.
Greatest fear for your children's future?
That they'll get in their own way and be afraid of succeeding. Like they won't be willing to take that step necessary to really, just flourish.
Unrealized potential.
Yeah.
Greatest fear for your children's future?
That they give up. That they give up and settle into a mediocre life. You know what I mean? I feel like both of them were raised decent enough to where they can pursue greatness, and they both have greatness in them. So I feel like if they just give up, it's one thing to try and fail, that's different. To just give up and just take the easy way out, that's probably my greatest fear. If they take a chance, if you fail 4 or 5 times, but you took that chance 4 or 5 times, I can live with that. Then I'm good. But if I see you just giving up and just laying down and saying, "Oh, I'm just gonna take what life gives me," I can't have that. Period.
And thinking about my kids, is the fear that I have is the lack of control. I grew up in a time where your awareness led to your safety, your good decision making kept you out of trouble, and so I didn't have an option to be reckless, or I didn't have an option to be careless. I had to be really careful. And so for my kids, they don't have that same urgency. And so without an urgency of decision making, they don't get a chance to see what happened to people who run their mouth, or what happened to people who make bad decisions. So they're learning by hearing about things, but not actually experiencing them. And so part of what happens as a father, being generationally different, is thinking about having some concern for putting them out in a world it's a cold, cold world, and they don't know it. I knew firsthand how cold the world could be. So for them, as they grow up, watching them make decisions and enter the world is probably my greatest fear.
Ignorance.
Their own or the world's?
Theirs and the world. Theirs and the world, but a lot on the world, because we have a lot of ignorance in the world. And I just think that, humankind that lacks knowledge and any incentive for knowledge is destined to die, is destined to fail. So I think, to me, the biggest fear is just ignorance. Just being, not being aware, not choosing to be aware, dwelling in ignorance is my biggest fear.
My greatest fear is just sort of the craziness that's going on in our country, even at this moment, and not knowing what foolish decisions this country will make with future leaders. Is this current administration the worst of the worst? Is it going to get even worse than this? Those are the things that always, sort of concern me moving forward, because I just feel like, as wonderful as America is, and this is a democracy, and we, have all of these liberties, I think that sometimes we just do things as a country because we can. What is the landscape of this country going to look like, when, my oldest daughter is the age that I am now, when she's 39? What is that going to look like for her and her family? What is that going to look like for my for my sons. I mean, one of my sons has autism, and so what is his landscape going to look like, and are there going to be people long after I'm said and done on this earth that are going to look out for his well-being and his best interest.
Legacy. How do you want to be remembered as a father and as a man?
I would just like to be remembered, as a guy that loved his daughter. Being a good dad. I was an okay brother. An awesome uncle. Just being remembered as far as between my ups and downs, that my life could be something of an example. When somebody's speaking of me while I'm gone, they won't have to be embarrassed for me or skip any parts out. That I lived a life of faith in honor.
For me, it's just the kids. Just want them to just feel like they're loved, and that their dad was always loved them, even when he yelled at them when they were younger. Even when he got frustrated at times, he always loved them.
Okay.
Always wanted the best for him.
So that's legacy. I don't want to go out as no famous star or no. Just he was a hard worker. That's just what he did. He's every chance he got, to improve or empower his family, by any means, he did it.
A lot of people view me as a very, sort of strong, stoic person, but I also want people to know that, I have had and will continue to have my moments of weakness, and I have my times of need as well. And there's this meme on Facebook where it says you need to check on your strong friend, and I am the strong friend that people rarely check on. And so I would want people from knowing me and my legacy to say, when there are other people that are strong and that seem to have it all together, they still need to be checked on and they need to be supported. And because it's very difficult, but people have to understand that even strong people, they need people to talk to, they need support, as well. You can't just assume that everything is just always okay with them.
I always say, where does the tree go for shade?
Exactly. Yeah.
As a father, I just want to be remembered as a person who loved and cared and was there, that type of thing, like a present, active father. I think if I can be remembered as that, everything else is cool. It's all, the rest is icing on the cake, I would like to be remembered as a man, as somebody who cared about the community, somebody who cared about people, somebody who was respectful, somebody who was respected.
What's so interesting? I go into locked facilities all the time and work with young people, and one of the questions I ask them is, what do you want your legacy to be? And it's one of my tools I use to help them think beyond their immediate circumstance. And I think if you're thoughtful about your legacy, then you can engage in it daily. And you can kind of shoot for the legacy you desire. So I think you're gonna have a legacy regardless of your intention or not. So, in saying all of that, I think my biggest focus has been, like I said, being a good father, being a good husband, being in service of my community. I think I love education, but also appreciate what it does for people, what it offers them. I do see myself as an activist inside of this classroom. Sometimes I see myself as a leader. I don't necessarily like that title, but sometimes I see myself as that. And so I think I want my legacy to resonate in those areas.
Final series of questions. It's going to be word association.
Okay.
All right. Fatherhood.
Testing.
Children.
Busy.
Education.
Important.
Incarceration.
Stay away.
Black love.
Beautiful.
Africa.
Motherland.
Law enforcement.
Valuable.
Slavery.
Past.
America.
Opportunity.
Fatherhood.
Important.
Children.
Legacy.
Incarceration.
Bondage.
Education.
Necessary.
Black love.
Umoja.
Africa.
Origin.
Law enforcement.
Huh.
Children.
A treasure, gift from God.
Incarceration.
The plague of the black community.
Education.
Important.
Black love.
Very important.
Africa.
Motherland.
Law enforcement.
It's
Fatherhood.
Blessing.
Children.
More.
Education.
Imperative.
Incarceration.
Hell.
Black love.
Breath of fresh air.
Africa.
Home.
Law enforcement.
Guns.
Slavery.
Painful.
America.
Toxic.
Fatherhood.
Love.
Children.
My world.
Incarceration.
1 in 3.
Education.
The start in equalizing the playing field.
Black love.
Beautiful.
Africa.
Strength.
Law enforcement.
Police brutality.
All right. Fatherhood.
Protection. Guidance.
Children.
Future.
Education.
The key.
Incarceration.
Setback.
Black love.
Beautiful.
Africa.
The future.
Law enforcement.
Shady.
Slavery.
The problem.
America.
Full of shit.
Slavery.
Ongoing.
America.
Joke.
Education.
A necessity.
Black love.
Powerful.
Africa.
Home.
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement.
Incarceration.
Awful.
Education.
Important.
Black love.
Very important.
Africa.
I want to go.
Law enforcement.
Oh. Necessary but awful right now. Very bad reputation.
Slavery.
Hurtful.
America.
Confused.
Okay. Fatherhood.
Wisdom.
Children.
Life.
Education.
Resources.
Incarceration.
Modern day slavery.
Law enforcement.
Broken.
Slavery.
It's caused generations of pain and suffering.
America.
In need of healing and restoration immediately.
Fatherhood.
Patience.
Children.
Can I say patience again?
Education.
Discipline.
Incarceration.
Injustice.
Black love.
Everything.
Africa.
Homeland.
Law enforcement.
Sketchy.
Slavery.
Impactful.
America.
Confusing.
Fatherhood.
Trials and tribulations.
Children.
Love.
Education.
Necessary.
Incarceration.
An attack.
Black love.
Absolutely important.
Africa.
Home. Birthplace.
Law enforcement.
A necessary evil.
Slavery.
A weapon of mass destruction.
America.
Love-hate relationship.
Incarceration.
Incarceration. Incarceration, I would say, I would just say it's unfair.
Law enforcement.
I would say law enforcement needs law enforcement.
That's a good one. Excellent. That's excellent. I love it.
America, our greatest challenge.
We are done, my friend.
Really?
That's it. This has been a pleasure. Honestly. Great.
That was it?
That's it. You're
Oh
done,
man, I
bro.
was expecting more.
That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
None more?
That's it. That is it, my friend. You did a great job. It was so awesome. This has been a pleasure.
That's it.
Honestly. All in under 20 minutes.
All right, appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. It really has.
Thank you, Rashid.
Excellent interview, my friend.
Thank you.
Excellent interview.
Thank you.
So for parents, I think it's important to make sure we manage that table time. We sit down with our kids. That we forget the second thing. But anyway, I give up. I'm trying to remember.
It's okay.
I'm doing this interview right now. I'm gonna miss it. Yeah. No, not like a job interview. Like my homegirl, she's running this like documentary.
You good? You want to keep drinking or?
Give me 2-minute countdown. 2 minutes. You need a crew. You know, they got to come up with 2 minutes.